How I dealt with workplace drama, a survival story. I had always thought of myself as someone who could handle workplace drama. After all, I'd been in the workforce for years and had learned to navigate office politics, cliques, and all the other little nuances that come with any job. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened at my new job. I had recently started working at a small marketing agency, a place that seemed like it would be my perfect fit. The company was progressive, with an open-door policy, and the people seemed friendly enough. I quickly bonded with a few colleagues, and everything felt like it was going smoothly, until one fateful Tuesday morning when everything changed. It started as a regular meeting, one of those weekly catch-ups where everyone discusses their progress, goals, and any challenges. I had just finished sharing my latest project updates when I noticed Sarah, a senior manager who had been working at the agency for several years, glaring at me. I tried not to let it bother me. Sarah was known for being a bit standoffish, but I hadn't had any issues with her before. She smiled thinly as I wrapped up my presentation, and I thought I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, but I brushed it off. Little did I know, that moment would be the beginning of a nightmare. The next few days were uncomfortable. Sarah started making passive-aggressive comments in meetings, subtly criticizing my work without offering any constructive feedback. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the more I observed, the more I realized something was off. She would interrupt me in meetings, questioning my decisions in front of others, and whenever I'd suggest an idea, she'd shoot it down without even considering it. The tension in the office started to grow. I could feel the atmosphere changing. I noticed that other coworkers, who had once been friendly, were now avoiding eye contact with me. It was as though a wall had been built between us, and I couldn't understand why. One day, I overheard two colleagues whispering in the break room about the drama unfolding with Sarah and me. I didn't catch all of it, but from what I did hear, it was clear that Sarah had been telling others that I was incompetent and difficult to work with. I felt blindsided. Not only was she undermining my work, but she was also spreading rumors about me behind my back. My gut told me that something more was going on. This wasn't just about my work. There was something personal about this attack. But what could it be? It wasn't until a week later, when I found myself sitting in the conference room with Sarah, that I realized just how deep the problem had become. She had called me into her office for a one-on-one discussion, and I could feel the weight of her presence as I walked in. The door shut behind me with an ominous click, and I sat down, trying to prepare myself for whatever she was about to throw at me. "I've been hearing some things, and I think we need to address them," Sarah said, her tone cold but controlled. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I had no idea where this was going, but I knew it wouldn't be good. "What exactly are you hearing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You've been pushing people around, causing a lot of unnecessary tension. People are uncomfortable working with you." My heart sank. I had no idea what she was talking about. I had tried my best to be a team player, to collaborate and contribute positively. But she was painting me as the villain. "I don't know what you mean," I said, genuinely confused. "I've been doing my job and trying to work with everyone." "That's not how it looks from my perspective," Sarah replied, her voice sharp. "You're making everyone uncomfortable. People are starting to question your role here." I was speechless. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like she was accusing me of things I hadn't done. There was no way to defend myself, especially when the people around me were already turning against me. Over the next few weeks, the situation only worsened. Sarah made it her mission to isolate me from the rest of the team. She started to pull strings behind the scenes, quietly making decisions that affected my work, excluding me from important meetings, and even taking credit for ideas that I had contributed to. I felt like I was being gaslit, nothing I did seemed to be good enough, and every time I tried to address the situation, I was shut down. The worst part was how everyone else seemed to fall in line. My coworkers, once supportive, were now either ignoring me or subtly siding with Sarah. I realized that if I didn't act fast, I would be completely alienated. So, I did what I had to do. I started documenting everything. I kept detailed records of meetings, emails, and conversations where Sarah was either undermining me or spreading lies. It felt like a terrible, toxic game, but I had no other choice. I needed evidence to protect myself. In the midst of all this, I began to feel a growing sense of paranoia. I didn't trust anyone in the office anymore. Every smile felt fake, every compliment seemed like a trap. I started double-checking everything I did, questioning whether I was being too sensitive or if I was actually the problem. I even began questioning myself. Was I the one who was difficult to work with? Was there something I wasn't seeing? But as I continued to document and observe, I started to notice more cracks in Sarah's facade. There were moments when she would slip up, revealing her true intentions. I remember one particular instance when I overheard her speaking to another colleague in the hallway. She was speaking in a low voice, but I caught the tail end of her conversation. "She's not going to last much longer here. I'm not going to let her ruin this team." The words sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just about work for Sarah, this was personal. She wanted me gone, and she was willing to do whatever it took to make it happen. Armed with the documentation I had collected, I decided it was time to confront Sarah. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had nothing left to lose. I called a meeting with her in HR. The room was tense, the air thick with anticipation as I presented my evidence. I detailed every instance of sabotage, every lie, every instance of exclusion. Sarah sat there, silent and red-faced, as I spoke. When I finished, HR looked at her and then at me. There was a long pause before they spoke. "Sarah," they said, "this behavior is unacceptable. We will be conducting an investigation." In that moment, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had stood up for myself. I had survived the storm. It didn't take long for the fallout to come. Sarah was reprimanded, and her behavior was officially addressed. While I never got the full details, I knew that the truth had come to light. The office dynamics slowly returned to normal, but the damage had already been done. I couldn't forget how easily people had turned on me, how they had all followed Sarah's lead without questioning her. But in the end, I learned a valuable lesson. In the workplace, there will always be drama. There will always be people who try to tear others down to lift themselves up. But as long as you stand your ground, trust yourself, and fight back when necessary, you can survive even the most toxic environments. It wasn't easy, and I'm still dealing with the aftermath, but I came out stronger. And I'll never let anyone make me feel small again. Caught my best friend gossiping about my relationship. What should I do? I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, sitting in the dark with my heart racing, trying to process what I just overheard. My best friend, Alex, and I have been inseparable since high school. We shared everything, secrets, dreams, and even the occasional embarrassing moment. When I started dating Chris a few months ago, I couldn't wait to introduce him to Alex, convinced he would love Chris as much as I did. I was so blissfully in love that I never considered the possibility of jealousy lurking beneath the surface. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to drop by Alex's apartment, hoping to surprise him with takeout from our favorite spot. I let myself in, knowing he was usually home on weekends. The apartment was quiet, which was odd, but I assumed he was just lounging around. As I made my way to the kitchen, I heard voices coming from the living room. I paused, thinking maybe he had friends over, but as I crept closer, I realized the conversation was about me. My stomach sank. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I could hear Alex's voice clearly, and what he was saying made my heart drop. "I just don't get it," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "Why is she so into him? He's not even her type." I felt frozen in place, the warmth of my previous excitement replaced with ice-cold dread. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Alex went on, mocking my relationship, bringing up things I had confided in him about Chris, like how he always forgot little things, including my birthday. I couldn't believe it. I felt betrayed in the worst way. How could someone I trusted so deeply say those things? The laughter that followed from their conversation pierced my heart like a dagger. It felt like they were laughing at me, at my happiness, and suddenly, the world felt too bright, too suffocating. I didn't even think. I burst into the room, the anger boiling over. "What the hell, Alex?" I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. The laughter stopped abruptly, and I could see the shock in their faces. Alex's mouth opened and closed, like he was trying to find words but failing miserably. I was just joking," he stammered, but I could see the panic in his eyes. "Just a joke?" I couldn't contain my fury. "You think this is funny? You're tearing me down behind my back. How could you do this to me? Alex shifted uncomfortably, trying to play it off. Come on, it was just harmless fun. You know I care about you, right? The words felt hollow, and a betrayal settled deep within me. I turned to Emma and Jake, who were both silent, their expressions a mix of surprise and discomfort. This isn't fun, Alex. This is betrayal, I yelled, the hurt spilling out of me like an overflowing dam. I stormed out, leaving Alex and our friends behind, and as I stepped into the cool air outside, I felt an emptiness take root in my chest. I spent the following days in a haze of anger and confusion. Alex began to distance himself from me, and I soon realized he was whispering about me to our other friends, manipulating them into believing I was overreacting. I felt like an outcast, a shadow among my own friends. The loneliness was suffocating. I missed the days when we would sit together, sharing laughter and dreams. I thought about reaching out, but every time I did, I heard Alex's mocking words echo in my mind. Days turned into weeks, and I began to experience strange occurrences. Late at night, I would wake up feeling like I was being watched, drenched in sweat and panic. I dismissed it as stress, but the unease only grew. I started receiving anonymous messages on my phone, cryptic lines like, "Trust no one and he's not what he seems." I brushed them off, thinking it was just someone trying to mess with me, but deep down, something felt off. I began to investigate. I dug through Alex's social media, looking for clues, and found a private group chat with Emma and Jake filled with messages about me, discussing how to keep me out of social plans. My stomach twisted as I read their plans to exclude me. I was devastated. It felt like they were all in on it, laughing behind my back while I thought we were friends. I couldn't shake the feeling that Alex was the mastermind behind it all. I confronted him again, but this time, it felt different. He was cold, distant, as if the warmth of our friendship had been replaced by something sinister. "You have no idea what I've done for you," he said, a strange glint in his eyes. "I've protected you." "From what?" I demanded, feeling the anger bubble up again. "What are you talking about?" But he just smiled, a twisted, unsettling smile that sent chills down my spine. In that moment, the realization hit me hard. Alex wasn't just a friend, he was controlling, possibly even dangerous. I knew I had to cut ties before it was too late. I distanced myself from him and the others, focusing on my own life. It felt liberating at first, but the shadows of doubt and fear still lurked. I could still feel Alex's eyes on me, lurking at the edges of my life. The last text I received from him was haunting, "You can't escape me." It left me with a lingering sense of dread. I've learned that trust is fragile and that sometimes, the ones closest to you can become your worst nightmare. Even now, as I reflect on everything that happened, I realize I'll never let my guard down again. If you're reading this, take heed. Be careful who you trust. Sometimes the people you think have your back are waiting for the perfect moment to betray you. And if you ever find yourself caught in a web of lies, remember that it's better to be alone than to be surrounded by false friends. Trust your instincts and always keep your eyes open because you never know what darkness lurks in the hearts of those you thought you knew. When I faced my fear of rejection, a bold move. I had always been terrified of rejection. It wasn't just the fear of failing, it was the way it felt deep inside, like a hole opening up in your chest, an emptiness you couldn't shake off. I've always been shy, reserved, never one to put myself out there. I preferred to keep to myself, away from the risk of embarrassment or disappointment. It was easier that way, right? To hide in the shadows and let life pass by, rather than taking the chance of falling flat on my face. But I knew deep down that I couldn't keep living like that. The fear had controlled my life for far too long. And it wasn't just about job opportunities or school, it was relationships, friendships, everything. I'd pass up on chances to make connections because of that all-consuming dread of being rejected. A few months ago, something happened that changed everything. I met her. Her name was Lily. She was confident, outgoing, everything I wasn't. I met her at a friend's party, and even though I was nervous as hell, I couldn't help but feel drawn to her. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with just her smile. We started talking that night, and to my surprise, we hit it off. We laughed, joked, and even exchanged numbers. She seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. But as the days went by, my usual insecurities started creeping in. What if I wasn't good enough for her? What if she only saw me as a friend, or worse, if she didn't like me at all? It didn't take long before I started pulling back. I stopped texting as much. I made excuses not to hang out. I didn't want to put myself out there and risk rejection, even though a part of me desperately wanted to get closer to her. One night, Lily texted me, asking why I hadn't been responding lately. I told her I was busy with work and other things, but the truth was that I was just afraid. I was scared that if I let her in, she'd see who I really was, someone who couldn't keep up with her, someone who wasn't interesting enough to deserve her time. She didn't text back for a few hours, and I felt that familiar pit in my stomach. What if she didn't want to be friends anymore? What if she thought I was rude or uninterested? When my phone finally buzzed with her reply, I braced myself for something that would break my heart. But instead, her message read, "Hey, I get it. You're not ready. But if you ever are, I'm here. I really like talking to you." That message hit me harder than anything else she could have said. It wasn't just a rejection, it was an invitation, a reminder that I had a chance, and I was letting it slip away because of my own fear. It was like a wake-up call. I knew I couldn't keep hiding behind my insecurities forever. I had to face my fear of rejection. I couldn't live with the regret of never trying. The next day, I made a decision. I was going to take a risk. I was going to take the bold step and tell her how I felt, no more running, no more holding back. I was going to put myself out there, even if it meant facing rejection. That night, I texted her, "I've been thinking about what you said. I'm sorry for being distant. I really like you, and I think we could be great together. If you're open to it, I'd love to take you out sometime." My heart raced as I pressed send. My mind was spinning with thoughts of rejection. What if she didn't feel the same? What if she thought I was crazy for even asking? But then, I remembered what she said, "If you ever are ready, I'm here." Maybe this was my chance. Maybe she was waiting for me to make the move. The response came quickly, and when I saw it, I almost couldn't believe my eyes. "I've been hoping you'd say that," she wrote. "I like you too. Let's go for it." I stared at the message, dumbfounded. My heart was pounding in my chest, but this time it wasn't from fear, it was from excitement. It was a moment I had always dreamed of, but never thought would happen. I had faced my fear of rejection head-on, and it had paid off. We made plans to meet up the next weekend, and when I saw her in person again, it was like everything fell into place. We spent hours talking, laughing, and getting to know each other better. I felt like I was finally being seen, not for my fears or insecurities, but for who I really was. We were both nervous at first, but the more we talked, the more we realized how much we had in common. There was an instant connection, one that felt natural and effortless. We had dinner, went for a walk in the park, and before we knew it, hours had passed. It was perfect. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other more and more. I couldn't believe how easy it was to be around her, how comfortable I felt just being myself. It was like I had spent so long hiding behind walls that I forgot how to let them down. But with her, everything was different. She made me feel like it was okay to be vulnerable, to admit my fears and shortcomings. And in return, she opened up to me in ways that I didn't expect. We were both finding strength in each other, learning from one another. I realized that rejection wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Not trying, not taking the chance, that was the real regret. And here I was, living proof that taking that chance could change everything. But then, a few months into our relationship, something happened. A situation came up, a misunderstanding that tested everything. I won't get into details, but it was a situation that made me question everything I thought I knew about myself and her. For a moment, I felt that same old fear creeping in, the fear of rejection, of being abandoned when things got tough. I nearly pulled away again, nearly gave in to my insecurities. But then I stopped myself. I had already taken the bold step once. Why stop now? I had already faced my biggest fear, and I wasn't going to let it control me again. Instead of running, I did the opposite, I leaned in. I faced the problem head-on, talked through it, and together, we figured it out. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And in that moment, I realized how far I had come. I had faced my fear of rejection, not just once, but twice. And each time, I had grown stronger, more confident. I wasn't the person who hid anymore. I wasn't the person who feared the worst without even trying. I was someone who understood that rejection wasn't the end. It was just another step on the path. Looking back, I can't believe how much I've changed. I've learned that fear of rejection is a natural part of life, but it doesn't have to control you. The worst thing you can do is let it keep you from taking the chances that could change your life. If you're reading this and you're scared to put yourself out there, to take that bold move, do it. Take the chance, face your fear. It may be terrifying, but the reward on the other side is more than worth it. My friend stole my baby name, now she wants me to change mine. I had always dreamed of having a daughter and naming her something special, something unique that held deep meaning. When my best friend Sarah and I first discussed baby names years ago, we both casually mentioned our favorites, and I revealed mine, Aveline, a name I had loved since childhood. It felt enchanting, a blend of beauty and strength, just like I hoped my future daughter would be. Fast forward a few years, and I found out I was pregnant. The news was exhilarating, and I couldn't wait to share it with everyone, especially Sarah. I called her immediately, ecstatic, telling her about my pregnancy and the name I had chosen. Sarah sounded genuinely happy for me, and we spent hours discussing baby preparations, my nursery ideas, and how we would support each other through motherhood. Then, just a few months later, I received a text from Sarah. She had just given birth to a beautiful baby girl. My heart soared for her, but when I saw the name she had chosen, my stomach dropped. It was Aveline. I couldn't believe it. I felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. I was devastated. How could she take my baby name? I had told her my choice in confidence, and now she had gone and used it for her own child. It felt like a betrayal, and I struggled to process my emotions. I was happy for Sarah but felt anger bubbling beneath the surface. How could she do this to me? When I confronted her about it, she laughed it off, insisting it was a coincidence. It's such a beautiful name, how could I resist? She said, brushing aside my hurt feelings. I tried to remain composed, but inside, I was seething. I couldn't let her get away with this. I spent nights crying into my pillow, wondering if I should still name my daughter Aveline or come up with something else entirely. A part of me felt like I should abandon the name to avoid conflict, but another part felt like I was giving in to Sarah's inconsideration. I eventually decided I would keep the name Aveline because it was special to me, regardless of her decision. The weeks passed, and my due date approached. I was excited yet nervous, thinking about how things would unfold with Sarah after my daughter was born. Would she resent me for keeping the name? Would it ruin our friendship? These thoughts haunted me, but I tried to focus on my pregnancy and preparing for the big day. Then, the day finally came. I gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl, and when they handed her to me, I felt a rush of love I had never known before. As I held her, I whispered, "Welcome to the world, Aveline." Just a few hours later, Sarah arrived at the hospital, her baby in her arms, beaming with pride. The moment she saw my daughter's name on the board, her smile faltered. "Oh, so you really went with Aveline?" she said, her tone a mix of surprise and disapproval. "I thought we could talk about this before you decided." I felt my heart race. "Talk about what?" "I've been telling you since I was pregnant that Aveline was my choice," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes. "But you know I wanted to keep the name for my daughter. I thought we could share it." "Share it? You can't just take a name and expect me to give it up because you used it first," I snapped, feeling the anger boiling over. Sarah's eyes narrowed, and I could see the tension building between us. "It's not fair to me. Why can't you just change your mind?" "It's not too late," she demanded, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she have the audacity to ask me to change my daughter's name after she had taken it from me? "You can't be serious right now," I said, my voice trembling with disbelief. "You took my name. You can't just decide I should change it to make you comfortable." She huffed and crossed her arms, refusing to back down. "It'll just cause drama between our families if we both have daughters with the same name. Think about it." I shook my head, feeling the tears prick at my eyes. "I can't believe you would ask me to do this. Aveline is my baby's name, and I'm not changing it for you." She scoffed, "You're being selfish. This isn't just about you, it's about our friendship." My heart sank. This wasn't about friendship, it was about Sarah's desire to feel like she had the right to dictate my choices. I turned away from her, shaking with anger and frustration. Get out, I said, my voice firm. You need to leave. She paused, looking hurt, and for a moment, I felt guilty. But that guilt was quickly overshadowed by my resolve. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. After that day, things got tense. I returned home with Aveline, and Sarah sent me countless texts, pleading with me to reconsider, to be reasonable. I ignored her. I was too hurt to engage. My daughter was my priority, and I needed to focus on her, not Sarah's drama. Days turned into weeks, and I settled into motherhood. But the tension with Sarah lingered like a storm cloud overhead. I kept my distance, choosing not to engage with her on social media or answer her texts. The drama escalated when she decided to throw a birthday party for her daughter. I was hesitant to attend, but I knew I needed to be civil, for the sake of our friendship. When I arrived, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken tension. Sarah greeted me with a forced smile, but I could feel the animosity simmering beneath the surface. As the party progressed, I watched as she introduced her daughter, who was also named Aveline, to the guests, and the awkwardness was palpable. Guests were confused and whispered among themselves about the shared name, and I felt my heart pound in my chest. I was furious. Later in the day, while the kids played, I overheard Sarah talking to another friend. I can't believe she didn't change the name. It's so inconsiderate, she said, and I felt my blood boil. I couldn't let this go on. I approached her, my heart racing. You need to stop talking about me behind my back, Sarah. If you have a problem with my choice, say it to my face, I said, my voice steady despite my nerves. Her eyes widened, surprise flashing across her face. I wasn't talking about you, she exclaimed, but I could see the guilt in her expression. You have no right to demand I change my daughter's name after you took it from me, I continued, my voice rising. You are ruining our friendship over something that should be a joyful occasion. It's just a name, she shouted back, and I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. It's not just a name. It's my daughter's identity. You can't just dismiss that. You're being dramatic, she said dismissively, but I could see the cracks forming in her facade. The guests around us had gone quiet, sensing the growing tension. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. You have to understand, this isn't just about names. It's about respect. I respected your choice to name your child, but you didn't respect mine. And that hurts more than anything, I said, my voice softening. Her expression shifted, and I could see the realization hitting her. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought we could share it. I didn't think it would come to this, she admitted, her voice trembling. I could feel the anger dissipating as I looked at her, my best friend who had turned into a rival overnight. I want us to be okay, but I can't compromise on this. Aveline is my daughter, and I want her to feel proud of her name, I replied, my heart aching at the distance that had grown between us. Sarah took a step back, her eyes downcast. I'm sorry. I didn't think it through, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. I know I messed up. It felt like a small victory, but it was a step toward healing. I think we need some space to figure this out, I suggested, my voice calm. I hope you can understand that. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I do. I'm sorry. As the party continued, the atmosphere began to shift. I saw Sarah interacting with other guests, but the tension was still there, lingering in the air. Over the following weeks, I focused on Aveline and healing from the hurt of our friendship. Sarah sent me messages, trying to reach out and apologize, but I felt it was best to take time apart. Then, one day, I received a letter in the mail from her. It was heartfelt, filled with apologies and an understanding of the pain she caused. She expressed her wish to meet and talk things through, and I felt a glimmer of hope. We agreed to meet at a local park, our favorite spot. As I approached, I saw her sitting on a bench, looking anxious. I took a seat beside her, and we both sighed simultaneously. I've missed you, she said softly, and I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. I've missed us too, I replied, my heart ached for the friendship we once had. We spent hours talking, opening up about our feelings and the aita for refusing to babysit for my rich sister without payment. It all started when my sister, Claire, called me out of the blue, sounding frantic. She and her husband, Tom, had a fancy gala to attend, and they needed a last-minute babysitter for their two kids, Noah and Mia. I could already hear the stress in her voice as she explained how they couldn't find anyone else. I considered it for a moment. After all, I loved my niece and nephew, and they were usually a joy to be around. But then I remembered how Claire had always treated me like I was beneath her. She and Tom were wealthy, living in a sprawling mansion in an affluent neighborhood, while I was still renting a small apartment, struggling to make ends meet with my job as a graphic designer. They often flaunted their lifestyle, posting on social media about their extravagant vacations and designer clothes, while I had to watch my budget carefully. I hesitated, but the thought of my sister's desperation tugged at my heartstrings. I agreed to babysit, but I made it clear that I expected some form of compensation. "Claire, I'll help you out, but I think it's fair if you pay me something for the evening." "You know how busy I am," I said, trying to keep my tone light. There was a pause on the line, and then she let out a huff of frustration. "Really? You're going to make this about money? I thought we were family," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with disdain. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "It's not about that. I just think it's fair, especially since you guys can afford it," Claire sighed, and I could almost see her rolling her eyes. "Fine, I'll give you $100. Just be here by 6, she said reluctantly. I agreed, and as the day approached, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. On the evening of the gala, I arrived at Claire's house, and it was even more extravagant than I remembered. The kids were already in their pajamas, and Claire was frantically trying to finish getting ready. "Thanks for coming on such short notice," she said, shoving $100 bill into my hand without making eye contact. I smiled and took it, trying not to think about how awkward this situation felt. "No problem, I'm happy to help." The night went surprisingly well. Noah and Mia were excited to see me, and we spent the evening playing games and watching cartoons. But as the night wore on, I found myself reflecting on the disparity between our lives. The kids were adorable, but I felt a twinge of resentment as I remembered the times Claire had belittled my financial situation. By the time Tom and Claire returned home, I was exhausted but felt proud of the evening we had spent together. I expected them to thank me, but when they walked in, Claire's first words were about how much fun they had at the gala. "Did the kids behave?" she asked, barely glancing my way. "Yeah, they were great," I replied, a bit deflated. I really enjoyed spending time with them. Claire waved her hand dismissively, still focused on Tom as they recounted their evening. I felt invisible, my presence hardly acknowledged. After a few minutes, they finally turned their attention back to me, and I decided it was time to address the payment. "So, about that $100, I started, but Claire interrupted me. "Oh, right, here you go," she said, pulling out a crumpled bill from her purse. "Thanks for taking care of them." I felt a rush of irritation as I took the money. I really appreciate it, but I was hoping for a little more. This was a long night. Claire's expression shifted. "You're seriously going to ask for more money? I thought we were family. You should be grateful I even offered you anything." My heart raced as I tried to stay calm. "I just think it's fair to value my time and effort. I could have spent my evening working on my projects." The tension in the room thickened, and Tom chimed in, his voice defensive. "You knew what you were getting into. You should be thankful for the opportunity to spend time with your niece and nephew. It's not like we asked you to babysit every week." I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, their judgment weighing down on me. "I am grateful, but it's a job nonetheless. Just because you have money doesn't mean you can undervalue my time," I shot back, my frustration bubbling over. Claire crossed her arms, a look of disdain plastered across her face. "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with money, you'd appreciate what family means," she retorted. "You know, not everything is about financial compensation. Some things should come from the heart." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "I understand that, but I also work hard for my money. I can't just drop everything whenever you ask me to, and I think it's reasonable to expect to be compensated for my time." Claire scoffed, and the tension grew thicker. "So you're telling me that you're willing to let money ruin your relationship with your family?" I felt my stomach drop. "It's not about ruining relationships, Claire. It's about recognizing that my time is valuable too." She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. "If you want me to babysit again, we need to discuss payment first. It's that simple." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken resentment. "Whatever. If you're going to be this way, I don't need your help, Claire finally said, her voice cold. I can find someone else who isn't so focused on money. Good luck finding someone who cares about your kids as much as I do, I shot back, my voice sharper than intended. I stormed out of the house, feeling a mix of anger and disappointment. The drive home was a blur, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had let my sister's wealth and privilege get under my skin. As days turned into weeks, I struggled with the fallout. I didn't hear from Claire, and I felt torn. Was I wrong for wanting to be paid? A few weeks later, I found myself scrolling through social media, only to stumble upon a post from Claire. It was a picture of her family at a lavish vacation, captioned with how blessed they were to have each other. The comments were filled with praises about how wonderful they were. I felt a sharp pang of jealousy but also a tinge of relief that I had stood my ground. I spent the night thinking about my relationship with my sister. Should I reach out and apologize, or should I stick to my guns? I confided in a friend who suggested I let the dust settle. Family dynamics are complicated. Sometimes giving them space is the best thing, she said, and I took her advice. Weeks passed, and eventually, I received a text from Claire. Can we talk? It read, and I felt a rush of anxiety. I agreed to meet her for coffee, and as I sat across from her at the cafe, I couldn't help but notice how different she looked. There was a tension in her posture that hadn't been there before. I'm sorry about how things went down, she started, her voice softer than I expected. I didn't mean to make it sound like I didn't appreciate your help. I felt a glimmer of hope. Thank you. I just wanted to feel valued too, I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. Claire nodded, a hint of understanding in her eyes. I realize now that I took you for granted. I'm sorry if I made you feel like you weren't important. I just got caught up in the moment. We spent the next hour discussing everything from family to finances, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Claire admitted that her wealth sometimes created barriers between us, and I shared how it had made me feel small and undervalued. By the end of our conversation, we had reached an understanding. I'd still love for you to babysit when I need help, and I promise to pay you what's fair, she said, a genuine smile spreading across her face. And I'll make sure to respect your time more. I smiled back, feeling lighter. I'd like that. As I left the cafe, I realized that standing up for myself had created an opportunity for growth in our relationship. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about respect and understanding. Aita for refusing to babysit without payment? Maybe I was a little, but sometimes, standing my ground had brought us closer together. I regret not taking a chance, a story of missed opportunities. It's funny how life works sometimes. You don't even realize when the moments that could change everything are slipping through your fingers, not until it's too late. I didn't realize it when I had the chance. I was young, reckless, and filled with that strange confidence that only comes from being naive enough to think nothing could go wrong. But looking back, I wish I had known then what I know now. It was a few years ago, during my last year of college. I was stuck in a routine, waking up for classes, spending hours in the library, hanging out with friends when I had the time, and doing my best to avoid thinking about what would come next. I didn't really know what I wanted out of life, and that uncertainty made me hesitant. I had a friend, Sophie. She was the complete opposite of me, spontaneous, adventurous, and always up for something new. We'd met during freshman year, and even though we were different in almost every way, we became close. She was the kind of person who'd drag me out of my comfort zone, convincing me to go to that party I didn't want to attend, or to skip class just to take a walk with her through the city. She was also the type to chase after what she wanted, no hesitation. I admired that about her, but I didn't think I could live like that. I was always too cautious, too afraid of making the wrong choice, of doing something that might screw up my future. Sophie, though, she didn't care. She had this dream of moving to New York City after graduation. She talked about it constantly, how she wanted to be a photographer, how she could picture herself walking the streets, capturing moments, living her dream. I thought she was crazy. I'd never been to the city, but I didn't think someone like her, someone with big aspirations and no backup plan, would make it. I was happy to stay where I was, taking the safe route, aiming for the job I thought I should have. But Sophie. She made things happen. I'll never forget the night she sat me down in our favorite cafe, the one we used to go to when we needed to talk. She looked serious, her eyes wide, as if she had something important to say. She told me she had been offered a photography internship in New York. It wasn't just any internship, it was with a major agency, one that could open doors to the kind of career she'd always dreamed of. I remember how excited she was, how she practically glowed when she spoke about it. But she also told me something that I didn't expect. She wanted me to come with her. She didn't want to go alone, and she thought we'd be great together in the city, both of us starting fresh, finding our way. She said she needed someone who knew her, someone who could help her settle in and keep her grounded while she took risks. And there it was, the choice that could have changed everything. I could have said yes. I could have thrown caution to the wind, packed up my life, and gone with her. But instead, I did what I always did. I hesitated. I asked her about the risks, about how we would make it in such a big city, how I would get a job. I asked her how we would afford rent, how I would even survive in a place like that. She tried to reassure me, saying we could figure it out together, that she knew people who could help, that we had time to plan. But I couldn't get past the fear. The fear of failure, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of leaving everything behind. I couldn't do it. So I told her no. I said I wasn't ready, that I needed to stay where I was, that I had a future to build, and New York wasn't part of it. Sophie was disappointed, but she didn't push. She understood, or at least, I thought she did. She ended up moving to New York by herself, and I stayed behind. For a while, I convinced myself that I had made the right decision. I told myself that I was being practical, that my future was too important to risk it all on a whim. I threw myself into my studies, got a job in the city, and kept moving forward, just like everyone else. But the truth is, I didn't stop thinking about Sophie. She kept in touch, sending me photos of her adventures in the city, photos of iconic places, people, and moments that I knew I could have been a part of if I had just taken that leap. It was hard not to feel a pang of regret each time I saw her photos on social media, or heard her talk about the new friends she had made, the projects she was working on, the people she was meeting. It was even harder when she would call me, her voice filled with excitement as she told me how much she loved it there, how everything was falling into place. And then one day, I got the message. It was from Sophie. It had been months since we last talked in person, and this was the first time in a while that she had called me directly. I met someone, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I met someone who sees me, who gets me. I think I've finally found what I was looking for. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to be happy for her, but a part of me couldn't shake the feeling of loss. It wasn't that I wanted to be the one for her, it was the fact that I had missed out on everything. I had missed out on the chance to take risks, to change my life, to follow a dream that wasn't even mine but felt like it could have been. I had chosen the safe route, the easy route, and now it was too late to go back. That was when it hit me. I had wasted so much time, so many years, being afraid to take chances, being afraid to fail. I had passed up so many opportunities because I didn't want to mess up, but in the process, I had missed out on everything. Sophie had taken the leap, and now she was living the life she had always dreamed of. Meanwhile, I was stuck in the same place, in the same routine, wondering where it all went wrong. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't too late, that I could still make a change, that I could still take chances. But deep down, I knew I had missed my window. I had missed my chance to be a part of something bigger, to live a life that wasn't dictated by fear and uncertainty. And as I sat in my small apartment that night, alone with my thoughts, I realized that I would always regret not taking that chance. Maybe it's the fear that holds us back, or maybe it's just the way we convince ourselves that we're not ready for change. But one thing is certain, when you let those opportunities slip away, when you let fear rule your choices, you'll find yourself looking back with nothing but regret. So, if you're reading this and you're standing at a crossroads, unsure of what to do, unsure of whether to take the leap, do it. Take the chance. Don't wait until it's too late like I did. Because one day, you'll realize that the opportunity you passed up was the one that could have changed everything. And you'll wish you had taken it. Sister-in-law tells my kids I'm not their real parent. It was supposed to be a simple family gathering, a chance to reconnect and enjoy each other's company, but it turned into a nightmare I never saw coming. It started with the kids playing happily in the yard while I grilled burgers and my husband set up the patio for our guests. My sister-in-law, Emily, arrived late, as usual, and immediately began making snide comments about the food and decorations. I brushed it off because I wanted to enjoy the day and keep the peace for my children's sake. The day went on, laughter echoing through the backyard, and everything felt normal until dessert time, when the conversation took a dark turn. I had just cut up a big bowl of strawberries when I overheard Emily talking to my kids, Jamie and Sophie. Curiosity piqued, I leaned closer, pretending to busy myself with the dessert table while eavesdropping. You know, you don't have to listen to everything your mom says. She's not really your mom, I heard her say, her voice casual yet filled with a condescending undertone. My heart sank. What do you mean? Jamie asked, confusion etching his young face. Well, she didn't give birth to you, did she? She adopted you, Emily explained, leaning closer to them, and I felt the anger rise in my chest. I couldn't let this continue. My kids were too young to understand this kind of conversation. Emily, what are you doing? I interrupted, stepping in front of her and the kids, my voice shaking with anger. I was just explaining to them some facts about their family, she said, feigning innocence. This is not the time or place for this. They're just kids, I snapped, my heart racing. Jamie's wide eyes were locked on me, and Sophie looked confused, glancing between us. I'm just trying to help them understand where they come from, Emily said with a dismissive wave of her hand. They need to know that their real family is the one that gave birth to them. That is not your place to say, I shot back, trying to maintain my composure. They know they're adopted. We've talked about it. They don't need you to create doubt in their minds. Oh, come on. It's the truth, she insisted, her tone dripping with sarcasm. My kids were standing there, clearly confused, and I felt my heart breaking as I watched them process the words Emily had thrown at them. Mom, am I not your real son? Jamie asked, his voice trembling, and I felt a wave of devastation wash over me. No, sweetheart, you are my son. You are every bit my son. We love you, and that's what makes us a family, I reassured him, kneeling down to their level, but I could see the uncertainty in their eyes. But Aunt Emily said. He started, and I quickly cut him off, turning my full attention to him. Aunt Emily is wrong. Family is about love and care, not just blood. You are my son, and nothing can change that. I felt Emily's smug gaze piercing through me, her smirk infuriating. You're just trying to make yourself feel better, but kids deserve to know the truth, she said, her words laced with judgment. What truth? That you want to undermine everything we've built as a family. I replied, my anger boiling over. If you can't be supportive and respectful of our family dynamics, then I don't want you around my children. Emily crossed her arms defiantly, her expression hardening. Fine. I'll leave, but you're only hurting them by lying to them about their origins. As she stormed away, I felt a mix of relief and anger. I turned back to my kids, wrapping them in my arms. I'm so sorry you had to hear that, I whispered, holding them tightly. Mom, why did she say those things? Sophie asked, tears welling in her eyes. Because some people don't understand that family is about love, not just blood. You are my kids, and that will never change, I assured them, but doubt lingered in the air. After that day, things felt different. My sister-in-law became a ghost at family gatherings, and the silence between us was deafening. I spent countless nights worrying about the impact her words had on Jamie and Sophie. They seemed fine, but I could tell that something had shifted in their perception of our family. Every time they asked about their adoption, I was careful with my words, trying to instill a sense of pride and security while also deflecting the negativity Emily had introduced. As the weeks passed, I realized that my kids were still processing the whole situation. They would occasionally ask me if I was their real mom, and I would reassure them time and again, but the pain of that day lingered. I knew I had to confront Emily again, not just for my sake, but for the well-being of my children. I reached out to her, suggesting we meet for coffee. I wanted to clear the air, but deep down, I was bracing myself for another confrontation. When we sat down, the tension was palpable. I took a deep breath, knowing this had to be addressed. Emily, we need to talk about what happened at the barbecue, I began, my voice steady. Your words hurt my kids, and that's not okay. She rolled her eyes, dismissing my feelings. They needed to know the truth. But it's not your place to decide how they learn about their adoption. I'm their mother, and I will explain things to them in my own time, I said, trying to keep my cool. You can't just throw that information at them like it's nothing. She huffed, crossing her arms defensively. I was only being honest. It's not my fault you can't handle the truth. You're not being honest, you're being cruel. Family is about love, and that's what we've built. You are tearing that down with your words, I replied, feeling my voice shake with emotion. She stared at me, her expression hardening as she processed my words. You think you're better than me just because you adopted them, she spat. That's not what this is about. I shot back. This is about your choice to undermine my authority and my love for them. If you can't respect our family, then I can't have you around them. As the conversation continued, I felt a mix of anger and sadness wash over me. I never wanted to be in this position, but I also couldn't allow Emily to hurt my children any further. I left the coffee shop feeling drained but empowered. I was determined to protect my kids from any further negativity. Over the next few weeks, I continued to reinforce their sense of belonging, encouraging open conversations about their feelings. Mom, do you think Aunt Emily is right? Jamie asked one night as we read together. I paused, searching for the right words. Emily is wrong about many things, and she doesn't understand what family really means. You are my kids, and I love you more than anything. No one can take that away from us. They nodded, but the doubt still lingered in their eyes. I knew this would take time to heal, but I refused to let Emily's comments define our family. I made sure to create a safe space for my children, where they could express their fears and uncertainties. It was challenging, but with each passing day, I saw their confidence grow. Then, one day, Emily showed up at our house unannounced. My heart raced as I opened the door, unsure of what she wanted. Can we talk? She asked, her tone more subdued than usual. I hesitated but eventually nodded, leading her to the living room. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, she started, her eyes darting around the room. And I realized maybe I crossed a line. I wasn't expecting that. What do you mean? I asked, curious but cautious. I didn't mean to hurt your kids, I just thought they should know the truth about their origins, but I see now that I went about it all wrong, she admitted, looking genuinely remorseful. I want to apologize for how I handled it. I felt a flicker of hope. I appreciate that, Emily. It's important for us to communicate openly, especially when it comes to the kids. They deserve to feel safe and loved. She nodded, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page. I really do care about them, she said quietly. I just didn't know how to express that. Family is complicated, but the most important thing is love. We can work through this together if you're willing to try, I replied, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking, sharing stories about our childhoods and our hopes for our children's futures. As she left, I felt a sense of closure. I knew this wouldn't be the end of our challenges, but I was hopeful we could navigate them as a family. In the following months, I focused on strengthening the bond with my kids and rebuilding trust in their relationship with Emily. We took family trips, participated in activities together, and even had game nights with my sister-in-law. It was a long road, but I was determined to ensure my children knew that love was what made a family. Through all the ups and downs, we emerged stronger, and I felt grateful for the lessons learned. I realized that the love we shared as a family would always triumph over negativity and doubt. In the end, that